Hello?
Are you ready for the most ambitious crossover event of 2021? Because today I'm teaming up with Budget Builds Official as the two co-judges of the Spare Parts PC Challenge. If you don't know what that means, then you should probably be paying a bit more attention to my community tab in Discord. The links to join the Discord are down in the description below. The Spare Parts PC Build-Off is a challenge in which 3 contestants face head-to-head to build the best gaming PC possible. What's the catch? They can't buy any components. They can only use parts they had already lying around and not being used, or parts that were purchased prior to the competition. Our 3 contestants are spread across the world, originating from the likes of the UK and America, and in no particular order we have Tech Tested, PC Flippin' and Skyway Tech Reviews, all of which released their PC build videos last week, and the links to all of them will be down in the video description below. So if you haven't already watched those, I suggest pressing pause on this video and coming back and watching this later to find out who I think is the real winner. Okay, so as the judge, well, as the co-judge, it kind of makes sense that I know how the scoring works. So let's go over that. The final scores of each contestant will be made up of 2 different sections: performance benchmarks and the judging panel. AKA, that's Budget Builds and I. So what will we be judging on? Well, there are actually 9 different categories that we'll be judging against. They are aesthetics, creativity, upgradability, a category called I Can't Believe He Did That, which is a category where you'll gain points for the most mind-blowing ideas and workarounds. We've also got system balance, effort, cable management, nice to have features, things like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and lastly, airflow is our final category. Unfortunately, due to coronavirus restrictions, as well as a huge bloody ocean, we're not going to be able to go and take a look at these PC builds in person. So instead, we've got the next best thing. I'll be going through each of the videos here with you guys, critiquing and giving our thoughts as we go along. Then we'll be jumping in a call with Budget Builds Official to give our final scores. Oh, and of course, to crown the Spare Parts PC Build-Off champion. So let's start off by taking a look at what the contestants have brought to the table. And as you can see, all 3 contestants have some really unique builds. But let's go through each category and discuss what I thought about each of the builds. Starting out with aesthetics. In Matt's video, he's produced a really unique build, which is certainly a feature piece. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of the modified case, which he's cut in half. I certainly wouldn't want it on display in my house. Now that said, I did give some bonus points for the blue and white colour scheme. I thought the parts all had good matching colours. Overall though, I have to say sorry Matt, because the looks of this sawn in half PC just didn't jive with me. I gave Matt 5 out of 10. Kyle's build is so cool, I absolutely love it, but it is ugly. It looks less like a PC and more like a pile of crap found on a 6-year-old's bedroom floor. There's no colour scheme, Connects certainly isn't a theme, it's cool, it's super unique, but it's damn ugly. I gave Kyle 4 out of 10. Kevin's PC is a pretty traditional looking PC. Nothing looks damaged or cheap, it looks like a standard budget PC case I'd see for sale. And that's why I've given Kevin the win here. With 6.5 out of 10, it's not exactly exciting, but it is certainly the best looking. Oh, and I thought the snake head decoration, I thought that was pretty cool. It's a nice touch. And at the end of round 1, that leaves Skyway Tech Reviews out in the lead. But it remains a close competition with anyone able to take the crown. There's still 8 more categories to go. Our second category is creativity. I feel harsh saying this, but I'm not sure cutting the case in half for the hell of it really counts as creativity. This was a pretty predictable build, very sensible, very good performance, but nothing jumped out to me as being overly creative. Matt, I've given you a 3 out of 10 for creativity. Harsh? Perhaps. Deserved? Probably. Guys, let's all be real here. Kyle has blown it out of the park here. His Connects case, I absolutely love it. What more is there to say? This has to be the most creative thing I've seen in a while. I absolutely love this PC. I mean, who else would have thought to make a PC from Connects? I certainly wouldn't have. I never would have thought of anything like that. 8 out of 10, absolutely loved it. Every PC so far has been super unique, and this is certainly no exception. You've given it a style of your own with the Viper snake decorations, and it matches the colour scheme of your case. I like the effort you put in here, and that said, I would have loved to have seen the Viper theme continue throughout the rest of the build. Perhaps some spray paint or a tail at the back? Something else was definitely needed to really finish off this theme. So unfortunately, Kevin, because of that, you're only going to get 4 out of 10 for this one. Third up is upgradability. So Matt's build is a tough one. He's got water cooling and it's oof, you know, that's going to hurt upgradability. Now that said, the i7-950 leaves you very little room for upgrading on that platform. X58 is a great platform, but you haven't left yourself much room to upgrade without changing the motherboard as well. And again, because of water cooling, you'll need to either modify the loop or get a new graphics card with a water block. That's going to limit what you have access to on the second-hand and used market. Unfortunately, Matt, it's only going to be a 4 out of 10 for upgradability from me. Kyle had a really good choice of CPU. You've got some great options for upgrades with a 3770K. It would be an absolutely fantastic upgrade for this build, and an affordable one at that. You have, however, maxed out your RAM capacity on your motherboard, which is going to limit future upgradability options. The case also gives you great easy access for doing all of your upgrades too, which helps you out a bit here in this department. Kyle, you're walking away with a 7 out of 10 from me. Kevin's PC has a clear upgrade path. It's a very short and limited upgrade path, but it's clear nonetheless. Upgrading to the likes of an 8350 would certainly improve your productivity sort of scores with this PC. Unfortunately, you're not really going to be able to get much better gaming performance without changing what platform you're on. FX really hasn't aged well. However, you do have the benefit of an unmodified ATX case. You've got a nice and easy way to upgrade in a case that actually will support your components without falling over as if it was made of Connects. Our next category is, I can't believe he did that! You know, Matt, cutting a case in half is certainly a bold move, but I'm not sure why you would want to do that. But hey, you know, power to you, you did it anyway. And repairing that water cooling loop, you're a braver man than I. And that would have been a write-off for me. So good attempt here, 4 out of 10, nothing blew me away, but a valiant effort regardless. Congratulations to you, Carl, because you had the one thing that I genuinely could not believe. I've already given you some good points for creativity due to the Connects case, but you're getting double points here because that was just amazing. That said, watching you mount a hard drive with a rubber band was kind of painful, and I couldn't believe you do that to a poor hard drive, so I'm going to have to take off a point or two for that. 5 out of 10 for you here. Kevin's idea of a multi-use system was great. This also makes you the only contestant with a multi-GPU setup. Even if you can't really use them in the traditional multi-GPU fashion, I still thought this was a fantastic idea. I've given you 4 points for this because really, who else would have thought to have done this? There's such little benefit, but I love it because you had the balls to do it anyway. So like I say, 4 out of 10. The next category is system balance. Matt, I think you know just as well as I do that the CPU is definitely holding you back here. That much is obvious. Now with that being said, you've got a decent overclock going on here as well, and that's certainly helping you out a lot, but that GPU is still being held back by that i7-950, so you're losing points for that. I'm also taking off a point for a lack of a dedicated hard drive. You won't fit many games on your 240GB SSD these days, but still, 6 out of 10 isn't bad. Kyle, your system is actually pretty well balanced. You've got a mid-range CPU and GPU from more or less the same era. No one component is an absolutely devastating bottleneck. I think you've matched these parts really well. Now that said, you are losing points for not including an SSD. Windows 10 really chugs without one. So sorry Kyle, you could have had an almost perfect score here, but instead just 7 out of 10 from me. Kevin, you are getting 6 out of 10 from me. You had a good selection of parts, they all worked well together, and despite only having 8GB of RAM, this was typical of systems built on the AM3 platform, so I don't want to penalise you too badly for that. It was also great to see an SSD and dual hard drive setup. This is pretty much the optimal storage solution in my mind, so you really hit the nail on the head there. The next category is effort, and I can safely say this section is really easy for me. It's clear from all of the videos that everyone has really poured their heart and souls into these builds. Nobody has let the team down. Everyone has come up with great spare parts builds, and everyone has a really unique touch that they've added to their systems. They'll always remember these as that one crazy PC build they did for that collaboration video. I loved them all. 10 out of 10 for everyone. Next up is cable management. And Matt, considering half the case is missing, you did surprisingly well. Everything is zip tied down and your modular PSU is a big help here. I'm really impressed. 7 out of 10. Kyle's Connects case could only take him so far because it's here that it started to let him down. This was some spaghetti cables going on. And that said, you did the best you could considering your power supply wasn't modular and you had a case made of connects. So valiant effort, 4 out of 10. In Kevin's build there was definitely an attempt at cable management, but I could see some real weak points that could have easily been addressed. For instance, I think the CPU power connector should have been routed along the top edge of the motherboard rather than in front of the GPUs. Sure, the case hides a lot of this, but still, we know the cables are there being hidden by that metal side panel. Only 3 out of 10 from me on this one. This category is nice to have features, and Matt, the only nice to have features here are the fan grills and the water cooling. Oh, and of course the modular power supply. The only issue is that the fan grills are going to catch next to no dust, and you say yourself in the video, the water cooling is scary and you wouldn't want to leave it running if you weren't in the room.
I'm a little scared to leave that thing running without me being in the room ready to shut it off.
For those reasons, I can only give you 1 out of 10 here. Kyle, buddy, oh man, this is tragic. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything that I would consider a nice to have feature here. No modular PSU, a rubber band hard drive, and a case that looks like it would blow over in the wind. Sorry, but this is a rough score for you. 0 out of 10. Kevin, I liked this. I liked this a lot because I did notice a cheeky FireWire and Wi-Fi card in there. FireWire is certainly long dead, but it's a feature that you have, so I'm going to give you points for it. And on top of that, your Wi-Fi adapter didn't seem to actually have an antenna, so I'm not sure whether you just removed those for B-roll or whether they genuinely didn't exist, but either way, it's there, and I'm going to give you some points for it, just not many. You're going to get 3 out of 10, which wins you this category. And last but not least, we have airflow. Matt, you are getting 10 out of 10 because not only does your case have no side panel, for max airflow of course, you've also gone ahead and done a full water cooling loop. It would be nice to have a rear fan outtake, but I didn't deduct points for this because it would have absolutely no impact on the performance of this system. Kyle is getting 9 out of 10 points here, because how can you complain about airflow when there is absolutely nothing to block it because you've made your case out of connects? That said, I would have loved to have seen a better CPU cooler here, as the stock cooler, whilst sufficient, will limit your capabilities if you upgrade your CPU in the future. Hence, only 9 out of 10. Unfortunately, Kevin, you're getting 5 out of 10 because your case is pretty restrictive in terms of airflow, at least when compared to the competition. The Wraith CPU cooler helps you out a lot here and nets you some extra points, but unfortunately overall, your PC had the worst airflow of all. And on that note, it is time to crown my personal winner of the Spare Parts PC build-off. For me, it's incredibly close between all 3 contestants. Now with that said, it's clear to me who I think should win. And that's Kyle from PC Flipping. But that doesn't mean he's actually won. Not only is there another judge to go check out, but there's also the performance to take into consideration. So how about we check in with Budget Build's official to combine our opinions and come up with a final winner. If you want to see his in-depth opinion, go check out his video in the description below. But otherwise, let's jump on Discord and chat with Budget Build's official and work out who we want to declare the overall winner.
Hello everyone and welcome to what is going to be the judging part of the video where both me and RMDTECH are going to be going through a list of criteria that we've been given, and we're going to be saying who we think won, why we think they won, how we'd rank them or score them. This has all been sort of very much done on the fly. Like, we've got a criteria, but I feel like we've got very different ranking systems already. We've got a basic idea in mind. Anyway, we'll get right into it. You start. So one of the first areas we had to rank it on was aesthetics. What route did you go down for this?
Okay, so I've done all of mine based on a out of 10 score. I don't know, which should I mention my out of 10 scores or should I leave it? I'm not sure.
You can mention your out of 10 scores.
Okay, let's mention them. So I've essentially looked, the way I've scored aesthetics is, would I want this in my living room? If a guest came round, would they run away if they saw this as a feature piece in my living room? And the answer to all of the builds is pretty much yes. But that's yes in a different way to all of them, but pretty much yes to all of them. And I'll tell you what, they're all actually quite close. I've scored them all pretty much half points out of 10. So they've all got roughly 5.
Okay. See,
so I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
See, well, I've sort of combined. I know that you've not gone down this route. I've combined aesthetics and creativity, which was the second criterion, to my opinion here, because I thought the creativity was the aesthetics. Because I love your criteria system of would you want it in your living room, but by the same regard, I'm the guy that built a PC in a shoebox, which was used for far too long. So I sort of saw it as an opportunity to combine what I thought was creative and how it turned out. And I gotta say, top of the list, I loved the Kinect PC. I thought it looked fantastic. I mean, yes, it did resemble a bit of a bomb, but
Yes.
at the end of the day, I thought the creativity and the aesthetics there were fantastic. I thought the Viper case, I thought adding the Viper on the front was very creative. I mean, it adds something to what is, at the end of the day, look like a CIT style case. It makes it look a little bit more exciting. And the cut open view, it's kind of janky, but in like a Mad Max style janky kind of way. I very much rank them all very highly like that. But I gotta say, the Kinect PC won the aesthetics for me.
See, that's really interesting because I've actually kind of gone the opposite way. The Kinect PC got the lowest aesthetic score from me.
Interesting.
I gave the Kinect PC 4 out of 10 for aesthetics. Now that said, it did win creativity. I gave it 8 out of 10 for creativity, and that's purely on the basis that I loved Kinect as a kid, and I thought it was a really creative idea that I'd never even thought of. And it actually turned out quite well.
Wonder if you could add like wheels.
I tell you what, I bet you could put some motorized wheels on that and make a portable gaming PC.
That's a video right there.
That's a video idea in itself. You can have that one for free.
I think he's still got the case built as well, so that is actually something you can get right on. Oh my god.
But yeah, in terms of aesthetics, I have to say PC flipping came last for me. This was one ugly PC. It was creative by every stretch of the imagination, but I would not want this in my living room. I thought tech tested, middle of the road. I thought it looked good, except like you say, it's Mad Maxy, and the water cooling stuff. Water cooling's great and everything, but it's some pretty ugly water cooling components. The tubes didn't really like what was going on there. Skyway Tech Reviews, I did give the highest score. I gave them 6.5 out of 10 in terms of aesthetics. Thought, like you say, the CIT sort of style case, I thought that was really cool. And the Viper really added a whole new element to it. But I would have liked to have seen it sort of go all the way through the build. I would have liked to see that theme carry on.
I think like a bit of spray painting or taking a bit of paint to the case. It doesn't have to be fantastic, but like maybe just bit of masking tape along the top and spray down the case with green. Fully go along that route.
Or perhaps a tail along the back, something.
Oh, that's clever.
Could have
actually.
added to it.
I'm terrible for this because the only time I've actually bothered to paint a case was when I was doing that £5 challenge and did use radiator enamel, which was a terrible idea. So, yeah, I'm going to stop there because I've got no advice when it comes to painting. Would you like to move on to upgradability? Because I've got some really interesting things to say about the next category, which is upgradability of the systems. Because that's something that matters so much when it comes to spare parts, is if you're going to bother putting your spare parts together, why should you do it if you can't upgrade them later? And I genuinely thought, out of all of the systems, I'd have a hard time trying to decide between the 1155 socket of PC flipping or the X58 socket of Tech Tested, because on the one hand, Tech Tested, he's got the core advantage. You can get a 6-core Xeon for about £25. You can overclock that to about 4+ gigahertz, and you've got something that can be moderately competitive with low-end Ryzen CPUs. That's really impressive for the age of the hardware it is. You've got, quad-channel memory on there. It's really impressive. In fact, the more I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking X58 may have been the most upgradable platform there. But at the same time, when it comes to the ease of upgradability, 1155, I can pop down CEX right now, or I could do when they used to be open, when they used to have stock as well, and you can go and get yourself an i7 3770. And once again, you're looking at low-end Ryzen-style performance on an older board and an older system, and it's just a simple thing that you can plop in. You don't have to worry about overclocking. It's Ivy Bridge. It's got great IPC. It's up to date. So although it doesn't have quad-channel memory, the memory controllers. Oh, no, the memory controllers on the CPU are... Either way, it's ring bus, so the memory disadvantage doesn't make as much of a difference. I had a thing I was going to say, but I was messing myself up there. The FX system, and that's my final point to talk on, was I think it's a dead end. I think I loved it for what it was back when I had it, but at the same time, there's a reason why I never bothered upgrading from my FX 4300 to something better, because it all kind of sucked. I mean, if things went the way AMD wanted, maybe, but as it stands, I went from an FX 4300 to a Skylake i3, and it just destroyed every single possible upgrade I could have made on FX. There's no upgradability to it anymore.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying there, like 100%. Although I think I've gone a slightly different route here. Now, I've sort of looked at this also, I mean, from the standpoint that you've taken in terms of what can I sort of upgrade here. But I've also taken into account what you were saying earlier about ease of upgradability. And that's one of the reasons I actually scored down tech tested on the basis that because it's water cooled, you're making life harder for yourself in terms of upgradability. And considering the fact that this water cooling, even in the best of circumstances, was already falling apart and leaking everywhere, is it really a system I want to be taking apart on a semi-regular basis to upgrade? And on top of that, getting yourself a water-cooled GPU in this market is going to be even harder. So that's another thing that's made it a bit harder for Matt here. He's also got 24 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm pretty sure that's the maximum he's going to be able to run on this platform. He's not really going to be going much further than that. So he's limiting himself in terms of the fact he's already pretty much hit the maximum. I mean, like you say, you can upgrade your CPU all day long, but in terms of everything else, yeah, he can add sort of more hard drives and stuff and more RAM and upgrade the CPU, but you really can't push it much further than he's already gone on this platform.
I mean, what, is X58's 11 years old at this point? It was pre-FX, wasn't it?
Exactly.
It was the FX competitor. I mean, it shows how much better it was than FX in the state that we're kind of being like, it's not too bad. But, at the same time, it very much is a case of, we're talking something that's pre-Ring Bus. Sandy Bridge is so closely related to what Intel's using today. It's borderline, pretty much the granddaddy of current Intel processors of the last decade. You go back to it and it's the same basic core-to-core design. Admittedly, it is like a decade old, but it still serves as, semi-modern, Whereas X58, I hate to say it, it shares more in line with the Core 2 Duo than it does the current i-series. It might have the i-series name, but at the end of the day, that i7 is more of a Core 2 quad with a memory controller slapped in it than it is an i5 or an i7 later on. So, I think at the end of the day, I would say PC Flippin' had the best system in terms of upgradability. X58 coming in close, and I really hate to say it, with Skyway Tech's thing. FX is so dead that I've just saved one from the bin and it's in the back of my car. So I really hate to say it because I absolutely loved his enthusiasm for it, but FX is not a route that I've been kind to, and it's not a route that's ever been kind to me. Would you agree with that, or anything else?
No, I agree 100%. FX, like you say, it really is dead in the water. I mean, what is it? It's a 6300 in that machine. Yeah, you've got a little bit of room to upgrade that, but it's really not going to net you any performance these days. Like going to an 8350, is it really going to be getting that much more benefit out of it? I don't think so.
I don't think there is. I mean, at the end of the day, we're seeing 4-core Ryzens match the 8-core Ryzens right now in games, because it's just, unless you're doing serious productivity workloads, even then, games aren't really touching more than 4 threads, or they might be, but they'll be, lightly touching them. They'll just be stroking the threads, as it were. They're not actually putting any load on them. It's like CSGO technically can use 8 threads. I'm sorry. When was the last time we saw it touch something more than cores 0 and 1? It's like a lot of games can say they're doing these things, and it might look like they are, but look at the individual core-to-core thing, and it's still the same situation where those first 2 cores are being hammered hard, and then everything after that is being, it gets worse and worse the higher core count you go. And that's the problem with FX is, yeah, you can get the core count on it quite easily, but those cores are terrible. But should we move on to the I can't believe he did this, which I think is a great category for this challenge?
Yes, I think it's very interesting because everyone did very different things here, none of which I expected.
I'll let you start with this category. I'm interested to hear what you think.
Okay, I absolutely loved what Skyway Tech Reviews did here. Having the multi-GPU system in the way that he did, I thought was I never would have thought to have done that, and I thought it was a really cool idea, having 2 GPUs in there for 2 different purposes, one for gaming and one for your sort of productivity, your rendering sort of tasks. I thought that was great. It was unexpected. I just thought it was really interesting. In terms of PC flipping, you know, we got the Kinects case, and I can't keep giving points just for the fact he's used Kinects, but again, it was crazy. Like, who
I didn't
saw
see
that
it coming.
coming?
I actually audibly
Could
laughed.
anyone have predicted that?
Oh, it was fantastic.
It was absolutely ridiculous, and you know, he's got to get points for that, because who would have thinking to build a case out of Kinects? But like he said, we were talking to him before. Apparently, there was a guide on how to do this. People have been doing this before. It's certainly not something I've ever seen, but I thought it was crazy, and I thought it definitely deserved points here.
Oh yeah.
Tech tested though, right? He's cut a case in half, right? And that's kind of what I focused on here. Why? Like, sure, it's a bold move, but I don't see why you would do it. You know, you maybe get a bit more airflow, sure, but it's already a pretty good water-cooled system. Do you really need it? You know,
No. It's the big thing right now. All the tech channels are talking about it. He's meant to be talking about the VRMs and how they're going to explode if he didn't cut it in half. You know, it's the big thing. It's up there with, you know, how like how these low wattage processors, these really power efficient processors, are going to blow up your VRMs. It's terrible.
How did I miss it?
Exactly. He's focusing on what all the huge channels are doing. He's ahead of the curve. Although saying that, the part that I praised so much about it is the fact that he repaired the all-in-one cooler pump. It wasn't an all-in-one cooler pump, but you know what I mean. He repaired the pump. Sorry. My notes are terrible. But you know what I mean. It's just, I don't dabble in water cooling much, if ever, and the idea of actually going to the effort of repairing a pump. I mean, I know he even said in his video he would not leave it running if he wasn't in the room. But, I mean, come on, like, you know, I repaired graphics cards with a hairdryer, you know, 5 minutes before I had to make the video. You know, I love me a little bit of bodging just for the sake of getting it done. You know, I can appreciate that. And I praise the exact same areas as you did with the Quadro graphics card. I mean, I ran an X300 from ATI in my Ryzen system because it had VGA and composite output. I had the only Ryzen system probably in the UK that could do composite. It was ridiculous. So I loved that. I love the whole idea of having a separate graphics card that's sole purpose is so niche and specific. It's fantastic. And then, of course, the Kinects case as well. We pretty much had the same, I can't believe he did that across the board.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's it. Each system had its own one unique thing that it did so well and was just out of the blue, no one expected. So yeah, it was kind of inevitable that we were going to have the same things there, because they were, like I say, just who would have expected any of those things?
Oh, exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
I definitely wouldn't have bothered repairing that pump, that reservoir. It was just, you saw how much water was coming out of that. I definitely would not have touched. I would have thought, no, that's going away. We're going with a different idea. That's not being repaired today. But he did it, and he got it working. Like you say, not gonna leave the room with it running, but he did get it working. You got to give him points for that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know how I'd rank them. I thought, in terms of I can't believe they did that, it was pretty high across the board. Do you know what I mean? Like, at the same time, I've praised the Kinects case so much in my last few categories. But on the other hand, the audacity of adding a second graphics card for me was just ridiculous. I want to rank that as my most. I can't believe he did that, because I genuinely cannot believe he did that. Like, I can understand repairing a pump. I can understand a bodge. I can understand having to, bodge your way around a case. But something as simple yet so ridiculous as adding a second graphics card for no purpose that is completely unrelated to the second one. It's so simple. I genuinely cannot believe he did that.
And you know what? Now you've said that, I think I'm actually going to change my scores, because originally I'd given this one to PC flipping, but now you've convinced me. I think Skyway's taken that one.
I think he
because,
deserves
like
that.
you say, I just can't believe it. Why would you do that? But do you know what? Power to you, Skyway Tech Reviews, because that is a cool little gimmick that your PC's got there.
Exactly. It is. I want to. It just. It was like, I remember this being such a huge selling point of Windows 10 as well, is the idea that you could use whatever graphics card you wanted, and DX12 would mean they would all work in tandem. That never happened. But yeah, it's just a bit of a, like, it's a throwback to when, FX did let you do those things, because all the FX boards, they were all pretty good with PCI lanes. I mean, I ran multi-GPUs on my FX stuff, and I hardly understood what I was doing at the time, because it was, 7-8 years ago now. But yeah, in fact, that system's just died, my FX system. It's so sad. I've got to go fix it, because I don't actually know how dead it might be. Apparently it turns on, but it doesn't sound good. Anyway, system balance. I'll let you start with this one, because I feel like I've got quite a bit to say, so I'll let you start.
Okay, let's have a look at my notes. So I actually gave this one to PC Flipping, and it was really close. There was 1 point in it. I gave Tech Tested and Skyway Tech Reviews the exact same score, but I gave it to PC Flipping by 1 point, because that system was really well balanced. It's got a mid-range CPU, a mid-range GPU, and they're both from pretty much the same era. No one component in there is a devastating bottleneck. Yeah, sure, he hasn't got an SSD, and
that's what I was going to say. Is the SSD is fine if you're running Windows 7, Windows 10 is just it's a slog on hard drive. It is a slog.
Yeah, so it would have been nice to see an SSD there, but overall, I thought other than the SSD, it was pretty well balanced. Tech tested. So go on.
I was going to say it's exactly what you would expect from an 1155 PC that, going back 2-3 years ago, I would have probably recommended on my channel and been like, build this if you want the best value. When Ryzen first came out, I would have said build PC Flippin's PC if you want to be running the latest games at sort of 1080p medium. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of, I understand fully where you're coming from there.
Yeah, and Tech Tested, I thought it was good, but the CPU was really holding him back. He's got great RAM capacity, and CPU overclock definitely is going to help there, but the GPU is just miles ahead of that processor, so it's really holding him back. So I had to score him down in terms of system balance. And also on top of that, he's got an SSD in this system, but I haven't seen anything related to a hard drive. 240 gigabytes in an SSD. Yeah, sure, you're going to keep Windows and some programs on there. But once you've installed Call of Duty Warzone, are you going to fit much more in there? I don't think so.
I mean, I've literally just moved my Steam install to a 240 gig SSD. That's just Steam by itself. I managed to install 3 games before GTA 5 is now so large it refused to install on it. Yeah, it is ridiculous. Games now, I mean, it's more the fact that there's so much bloat associated with like games. It's like CSGO, for example, I remember being like, a couple of gigabytes. But the fact is that so many games now, they operate as, they don't just exist for the year they're on the market and they're polished and they're released. They're updated so much that they just end up being twice the size they initially were, and you can't fit them all on there. I mean, I love the idea of the RAID 0 500 gig hard drives. I love the idea of, the excess amounts of storage that Skyway Tech's PC has. But I was going through Tech Tested's video, and I couldn't figure out the storage situation. I mean, it's not one you often think about with a PC. I mean, it doesn't often come to mind, I don't often think when I'm building a PC, oh, I need to get storage or something like that, because hard drives are so cheap now. But yeah, it's a weird one, because I'd say that is one of the areas that does let Tech Testeds down, was the storage, because it's so overkill in a lot of ways. I can understand the overkill graphics card in workstation tasks, because you've got the CUDA acceleration, especially with that memory bandwidth. I'd say it's, probably a video editing beast for the age of that PC, and that's an area I'd focus on, is where, although PC Flippins has got the, the balanced gaming advantage, Tech Testeds has the productivity advantage, because, it doesn't matter that processor's holding it back. When they can work in tandem in like video editing, rendering, maybe Blender workloads, you've got all that RAM in quad channel, you've got the graphics card, you've got the processor, and I'd say PC Flippins and Tech Tested are very close. I would probably rank them, probably together. Skyway Tech's, I want to say, is, just on the cusp of being balanced, but the issue I have with the system is, I know how the GTX 760 is around what my R9 285 was. They were actually competitors back in the day, and I had an FX CPU. You would not believe the insane upgrade I had when I moved to Skylake, because it shouldn't have been feasible. FX should not have performed that bad, but you wouldn't realize how much FX holds you back until you've seen the light and seen what came out after it. And I just any FX system which has got more than maybe a HD 770, it's going to be so single core limited that I just can't say it's balanced.
See, that's really interesting because I've never had a FX CPU. I've never owned one. I've never used one. I've built systems with them for people that have designed them themselves, but I've never actually used and operated one. So it's interesting you say that because I haven't got that experience to back that up. Because originally I had sort of said that it was a good selection. They all worked quite well together. But the thing is he's only got 8 gigabytes of RAM in Skyway Tech Review's PC. Originally it was 14. It was brought down to 8 by the fact that there was a couple of sticks that didn't work. And so that's going to be another limiting factor here. But if you think about it, it brings that system balance downwards. So if anything, it's actually improved the score here because the system is overall worse to match the FX CPU that's in it.
It's true, because that resembles the specs of my FX PC. Admittedly, I had 2 cores less because I had the 4-core version. But at the same time, as we said, games aren't really touching those extra 2 cores as it is. The FX 4300 borderline match the 6300 in most titles. And unless we're talking productivity, which I will give the FX some credit for, it's one of those areas where I want to say Skyway Tech has got a bit of productivity advantage with that Quadro. It's got the CUDA acceleration. It's got that aspect to it. But at the same time, it just doesn't have enough RAM in that sense. Whereas Tech Tested's, when it comes to productivity, I'd say his system is so well balanced that it can match PC Flippins. And that's what I'm struggling with. I'd probably have to say, PC Flippins and Tech Tested is a combined win. PC Flippins if you're a gamer, Tech Tested if you're into productivity. But Skyway Tech's, it's ranked ever so slightly below. It's on the cusp of being balanced for what it is, but it's just limited in so many areas. It's like if you're running something CPU heavy, boom, the FX is the limit. The only area it's got going for it is the insane amounts of VRAM and graphics cards, which is fine, but the problem is that there's no way the RAM that's in the system or that processor is going to be able to actually utilize it all.
Well, let's not forget, actually, this is the only system with an SSD hard drive combo.
That is true, actually.
So he has got that going for him. And I did give him points for that because every other system is either fully SSD or fully hard drive. And here we do have the combo, which really helps him out in terms of score, at least from my opinion anyway.
I do feel ever so bad ragging so much on this FX system because, I do kind of love it for getting me into PC gaming. But at the same time, I have used it. I have seen it. I know exactly what it's like. So, yeah, it's one of those weird ones. Shall we move on, though, to the next category?
Yes.
Effort. I couldn't call a winner. I thought it was 10 out of 10 across the board. Genuinely. Each video had its own style. I loved Skyway Tech's sort of more relaxed, chilled out style. Maybe it's, it'd been a long day. I'd been at work. I just, it was nice to have a video that was just lengthy and it reminded me of LGR a little bit, old school LGR, where it was just lengthy, drawn out, walking you through it, talking and that. It was very nice. But I also did appreciate, the more conventional style of Tech Tested and PC Flippins videos. In general, it's not so much the videos, I'd say, more like, just the effort across the board with the PCs. Everyone built a PC. Everyone went out of their way to, get them all working. And everyone's went out of their way to, have a good time. I mean, we're both in the little server that's been made to discuss all this. And I'd say that everyone's really been putting in the effort. I can't decide a winner here. I genuinely think I think everyone's a winner when it comes to effort.
Yeah, do you know what? I couldn't agree more. I mean, you've definitely done this more based on the videos that everyone's made.
Yeah.
I've done this more on the builds. So again, I've given everyone pretty much the exact same score. Yeah, everyone lost points and gained points in different areas, but like you say, everyone has really poured their heart and soul into these PCs and just the videos in general. So like you say, it's going to be pretty much an even score across the board from me as well.
Yeah. Next area, cable management. This is a weird one. I've wrote so much, and for some reason, I've started writing it like a script. For some unknown... the rest of my things are all notes. This one is actually written like I was going to voice it over. It says, going over the pictures of all the builds, because I've collated them all into little dropouts that I'm going to use in my video. Tech Tested seemed to have the best cable management, as it had the water cooling setup in there that was all working, and the majority of the cables were hidden quite nicely. Just if you had that up against the wall, yes, it's got the Mad Max style, but at the same time, it does look quite neat. For the same regard, Skyway, he's got a PC case. A PC case can hide literally every cable. I don't think he can lose in terms of cable management because you can't bloody see any cables. Do you know what I mean? It's the only case where we're not having to look at cables. And then, of course, you've got the Connects case. I love it. It's fantastic. I think it's brilliant. But at the same time, and I've said this earlier, it does have bomb-like tendencies. Random wires just sort of all over the place. I love it for what it is. But cable management. I'm sorry, PC flipping. There are only so many ways I can recommend you cable manage a Connects-based PC case.
You're certainly limited, aren't you? But
Yeah.
interestingly enough, I've actually given Skyway the worst in terms of cable management. Just because I'm a true believer in, just because you can't see it, doesn't mean you shouldn't cable manage it.
It's true, actually.
Just because you can't see that cable there, I know that there's that CPU power cable. I know that that's trailing round in front of the graphics card, and it's really getting on my nerves, even just thinking about it.
Okay,
that needs to be down behind the motherboard tray. And if there isn't a motherboard tray, it needs to be going up above the motherboard and across over the top of the CPU cooler. That's definitely, it shouldn't be going across the graphics cards like that.
It is true. Since doing, I did that Socket 423 PC, which was using an ancient, good power supply, but ancient one in a case that had, pretty much no space behind the back panel. There was no rear space to work with. At the end of the day, I managed to make it look nice because it's all about just being able to tuck things under things. Or you start with an idea and you start with the CPU power and you get that tucked in nicely behind the motherboard. It doesn't, at the end of the day, they're shielded cables. You can tuck them under the motherboard. Little things like that. Yes, the 24-pin power is a pain in the arse. But, at the same time, I do think I agree with you there. If I can get away with cable managing socket 423, which no one else has ever bothered with, I'd say there's no reason why you can't cable manage FX. It's far more modern, and that case is far nicer than what I used. So that is true, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And I've given the same high score to Tech Tested. Did a superb, absolutely amazing job with the cable management here. The cables are only visible where they absolutely have to be. I think he did a pretty much perfect job. I wouldn't have changed anything.
Yeah.
PC flipping for a Connects case, he did pretty well. Like you say, you can see cables everywhere. It does look a bit like a bomb, but at the same time, it could be a lot worse. It's spaghetti, it's tomato, it's ketchup, but it's where they can be tucked away, they are for the most part. There's definitely a couple of loose cables I can see that could have been tucked down or cable tied down. But for the most part, he was there. The rubber band, does this come under cable management? I'm not sure. But the rubber band, I'm not a fan of. So that is certainly not going to be scoring any points with me.
So I'd have to say, I was just going to say that I think for me, Tech Tested, Skyway Tech, and then PC flipping at the bottom for these categories, I think, unfortunately for me. I don't know if you'd rank it differently at all or, how you'd score them here.
I mean, put it this way. I've given Tech Tested 7 out of 10, PC flipping 4 out of 10, and Skyway 3 out of 10. So PC flipping and Skyway, very, very close in my opinion. But it was just, I don't know, maybe it was the camera angles in the videos that did it for me. But PC flippings just looked that tiny bit tidier. Even though I could see a lot more cables, I felt like they were managed a bit better.
This is one thing I will say. So when I was getting the screenshots for my video of the actual cutout of the PC to make little transparent images of it, for a case and cable management built out of Connects, it was surprisingly compact in terms of cable management because I was able to quite easily get a nice little cutout PNG without too much effort because I've tried to cut out some things before and you've got cables flying everywhere, you're tracing over it, trying to get, the right bit of cable to be transparent and all this. It was dead easy to do. I mean, I did it at probably about 4:30 in the morning, to be honest. But, if I was able to do it then, with my horrific image editing skills, then... I don't think any of them were particularly bad in that aspect. But I do think, objectively, Tech Tested just went above and beyond, and that's why he's
100%.
my winner there. Next one's nice to have, which is also combined with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, etc. I don't know really. I would say in terms of nice to have, Tech Tested's for X58 in terms of that stuff's worth money. That's all I can think of to say really. 1155. It's not holding excessive amounts of value, which is why it's such great value right now, because it's so cheap to buy. FX is in a weird state where it's expensive to buy, but no one's buying it, so you'd have a hard time if you were going to trying to flog it off, which is, I've looked at this in a weird way of nice to have it being how much is it worth. So I'd say Tech Tested is probably the one to want, but at the same time, it is more liable to leak water everywhere,
And that certainly is not a nice to have feature.
Yeah.
I don't want a water feature inside a gaming PC.
I don't think any of them really strike me as, okay, I love all of them, but none of them are what I would call nice to have.
See, no, I disagree. There's a clear winner here for me.
Go on.
Skyway is the clear winner for me.
Is it because it's an actual PC?
It's not because it's an actual PC. It's because he's actually gone ahead and put some additional add-in cards in there. He's got some extra features.
Okay.
We've got Firewire going on here. I thought that was great. That's so retro.
I forgot the Firewire, actually. That is incredibly useful because I use Firewire.
Well, there we go. It's the PC for you.
Exactly. This is how you win this competition. If you have put Firewire in your PC, you have objectively won this competition.
Well, there you go. But no, Skyway was definitely the winner for me in this one. The Firewire, he's got a Wi-Fi card in there as well. Now, I did notice there weren't any antennas plugged in on the back of the PC. I don't know whether that was just for the B-roll shots or whether it was just in there without antennas. I have no idea. But either way, the Wi-Fi card was there. And so the thought was there, and so I gave it points.
Honestly, you have put so much more thought into this area than I have, so I'm just objectively going to agree with your scores because I didn't even think of Firewire. So, what was your ranking on this one?
Okay, so everyone got. I'm sorry, but everyone got some really crap scores.
Okay.
Because not having an antenna, you had to lose some points there. But
True.
PC flipping got 0. It was the first time I gave 0 on anything.
That's so sad.
Tech Tested got 1 and Skyway got 3.
Okay.
So they're all very low scores because in terms of extra features, they're quite bare bones. But the fact that there was any at all, I had to give the free to Skyway, and that was it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough analysis. The point is these are spare parts. There is probably a reason these are spare parts and not parts they're using. The only other area, and the final area to mention, is airflow. Which is a strange one because objectively, PC flipping wins because it's essentially an open air test bench. It's airflow wise, it's whatever airflow's in the room. Skyway Tech, it's a cheap case, which is going to limit airflow, especially with all the add-in cards. Once Firewire will lose you some points there because, it's taking up space that could be used for airflow. Tech Tested's, I suppose you could argue, it had the airflow, but at the same time, it was water-cooled. It was objectively the water cooling is what was doing most of the cooling, which is, I suppose, points in favor in a sense because, it didn't need to rely on that airflow. I don't know what I'd rank here. I'd say all three were fairly, Skyways was an actual PC. It should actually have, an in and out airflow system, so should stay relatively cool. PC Flippins is, of course, exposed to the elements. When it's cool, it'll be cool. When it's hot, it'll be hot. And Tech Tested's, well, it's entirely up to the water cooling, which is liable to explode. So it's objectively the best cooled, but at the same time, it could pull, a Seat Ibiza that my mate has, and the radiator could explode, And I've seen this happen on a car. I think it'd be less pretty when it's on a computer that's got electric running through it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I did do it on airflow, but I also did it on cooling. As you say, I gave 10 out of 10 to Tech Tested. It's water cooled, it's open to the elements, considering the case has been cut in half, so it's pretty damn good. The only issue for me was there was no rear fan. it's 100% not needed here. There would be absolutely no benefit. It would not make anything cooler. It would not make anything run better. There would be no performance gain. But it just doesn't look right seeing a proper ATX case and no rear fan on it.
True,
I don't
actually.
like it. It makes me quite uncomfortable.
No, you're forgetting about the VRMs. We care about the VRMs. Your VRMs are going to explode. I do not care that this is a 10-year-old motherboard. They will explode because you did not put a 120mm fan facing there. And for that reason,
Very true.
I have no idea.
I can't take this seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I'd give a ranking there. I think I'd have to say probably PC Flippin', Tech Tested, and Skyway Tech because, they're very close, but that would be my ranking for them because I genuinely think, right now in the UK, we are seeing relatively cool weather. It's not particularly hot outside. I think it's about, 7-8 degrees usually, so it's not extraordinarily hot. So PC Flippin's case is quite good for this time of year. And we did have snow quite recently, so during that era, the cooling was upgraded. Then again,
and the Connect PC raises it up off of the snow, so he could run it out in the garden as well.
It's the only PC that you can use outside, elevated, with the
There you go.
airflow. Just needs to wait for a storm. Just have it outside during a really long VGA cable.
Oh yeah, give it a quick umbrella and it'll be perfect.
Oh, there we go. That's another video idea right there. Umbrella PC. Right, shall we give our conclusions? Because we did briefly discuss our conclusions before we started. My winner, and I loved all three videos, I loved all three PCs, but I do have to say, going through every single category we've been asked to rank, having looked at the benchmarks, although it wasn't the best, it didn't. A lot of the benchmarks were very, very, very much driven by the graphics cards. And of course, we were seeing GTX 760, GTX 770, GTX 780 Ti. We were essentially ranking benchmark performance by that. But when it came to the all-around categories to give extra points, I think PC Flippin' won. I loved the creativity. I loved the balance of the system. I loved the effort that went into it. It was, I think objectively, PC Flippin' was my winner. I think it was so close between everyone, but that was my consensus.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. PC Flippin' for me also came away the victor here. Now, in my scoring system, there were 90 points to give away in total. There was 5 points between the highest and the lowest scores. So it was seriously tight here. But PC Flippin' for me just about eked it out. It was well balanced. It had the airflow. It had the creativity. Yeah, it was lacking that SSD, but that one little upgrade, and you've got yourself a pretty good spare parts PC going on there. I wouldn't want it in an earthquake. That's for sure. But any other situation, I think it's definitely got to be the winner.
Yeah, I think so. I think the main thing it comes down to is, one, their specs that I could wholeheartedly recommend, and we did say this before we started, is, the 1155 is the new LGA 775. It's being thrown away. You could probably find it. Your grandmother's probably got a computer with it. This is a PC that anyone could replicate if they wanted the performance you can see in his video. X58 over in the UK, it doesn't exist. It's incredibly rare. Yes, it's more prevalent in Australia and in the United States, but it's just not something I could ever find as spare parts, really. FX, true, they can be spare parts over here in the UK. As I said, I've just picked some up that were going to be thrown away, but at the same time, FX just it's just dead for me. I really hate to say it. I mean, I probably will do a revisit myself, but it's just it's in limbo because it's not retro, and if it was retro, it'd suck for anything that's retro because it couldn't use any cores. So it just kind of stuck in terrible territory. But yeah, I mean that's mostly all I've got to say.
Yeah, there's really very little to add there. The water cooling of Tech Tested was great. The creativity with the Viper theme going on in Skyway, I loved that. That was also great. But like you say, the balance of PC Flipping and the fact that is LGA 1151. You can get that in. Well, sorry, LGA 1155. Thank you. Yeah, LGA 1155. That's in so many of the old Dell and HP Optiplexes that you can just pick up for dirt cheap on Facebook and eBay. There's going to be really easy to get secondhand, and just it's so likely to have it as a spare part that pretty much anyone could build that exact system, minus perhaps the Kinects. But you can get yourself a solid gaming PC there, and I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I think that's going to have to be our consensus. We think that PC Flippin' was the objective winner of the spare parts PC build-off. I'm going to say before we end this, we thought we could get this segment down to 5 to 10 minutes. I'm looking at the recording. We have been going for 42 minutes now. And this will be at the end of my video, so it'll be 10 minutes of edited budget builds, and it'll just be, this is the part you care about. It's like a podcast, but it's not a podcast, but it's about the judging, and it's everything you want to be hearing. So it's going to be fantastic. Thank you very much for joining me with this judging. I think it's been a really fun competition. What about you?
I think it's great. You know what? If it ever happens again, count me in as a contestant, because I want to be a part of this. I'm just sad that my Vega 64 is gone now, because I can tell you now that would have wiped away the competition if I'd have been in this one. I would have loved to have done a spare parts PC with my Vega 64, and I couldn't have used my 7400 because that's DDR4. But it would have been good. I could have wiped the floor with the benchmarks with that combo. Unfortunately, I wasn't involved this time in any way other than the judge. But next time, I want to be there. I want to be in as a contestant taking part in this. It was great fun.
Oh, it's been so much fun to see it happen, because we've been watching it. We were there when the videos went live. We were in the server, watching it all pop off. I asked my server for opinions on the builds. In fact, as you say, you wanted to be part of this. My best spare graphics card, I've just had a DM from someone telling me that it's just arrived in the post. So my only spare decent graphics card that can run things has actually just arrived at someone else's house. So I'm looking around at what I've got, and I'm looking around and I've got a GT 610 maybe. I've got nothing. I literally have no hardware anymore. It's just I have a Radeon WX 3100, which I think might actually be surprisingly okay for this. Oh, those are interesting. That's a video right there I want to see.
There we go. Yeah, it's one I've considered.
Oh, well, there you go. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, everyone. I have been Budget Builds. This has been RMDTECH.
Yep, this is me. Saying goodbye.
This is him. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Check out every single one of these videos. Subscribe to literally everyone involved, like RMDTECH, Skyway Tech, PC Flippin', Tech Tested. I'm saying a lot of tech here. Thank you very much for watching, and good night.